Well, today I have the opportunity to give a sermon. The title of my sermon is The Temptation of Christ. The Temptation of Christ. This account is found in Matthew 4 and Luke 4 in your Bibles. By the way, there's a handout in the back of the hall. One of the handouts, I already found a mistake in it, so I replaced some of those who came later. You'll see the mistake when you get there. I repeated two words twice in the quoting Strong's Concordance. But Matthew chapter 4, verse 1 says that the Son of God came to be tempted of the Lord by the Father. Matthew 4, verse 1, then Jesus was led up to the Spirit in the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. The word tempted, it comes from a word, Strong's word. It's a verb to test, tempt, to try to trap, to examine. There's a parallel to it that's a noun, and there's also another parallel to it that's only used 4 times. And you see, when you look at the Greek, you'll see how connected they are. And the word tempted now from the Strong's Concordance, and Strong's Concordance, if they get it right, you know, that's not exhaustive. It's not really as real professional as others. But I like the way the Strong's Concordance said it. He said, Strong's Concordance said, the difference between a test and a temptation is found in the tester's motivations and expectations. The devil tempts that the believer might fail God's standards of faith and so sin. God tests that he might determine and sharpen true character, with no focus on making the believer fail. And again, it's a lot of it dependent. The motivation determines how that word is best used. So we see here, let's look at a couple points before we spend more time in Matthew 4. Let's turn to James chapter 1. I want to rehearse a simple concept that, you know, I like when I give a presentation, I like to understand the objections to my presentation, to the subject of my presentation, I should say. And I like to address those first and then focus on, to me, the valuable contents of the presentation. In James chapter 1, verses 12 to 14, there's a part of the scripture here that says the Father does not tempt with evil. So I bring this up because if we look at the temptation of Matthew 4, when Christ was tempted, someone would say, is that what God normally does? Does God normally tempt? Well, again, I'm saying the Father does not tempt with evil. If you see James chapter 1, verses 12 through 14, blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him. So we know that we have to deal with temptation, and we want to react to temptation. Verse 13, James said, let no one say when he is tempted, I am tempted by God. Okay, is that a problem? That we read from Matthew 5 that Christ was tempted, and yet this verse says you don't say you're tempted by God. So again, you have to define the terms. Always have to define the terms whenever you study the Bible. Just in general reading, you have to define the terms, and certainly if you see what you think is a contradiction, you have to define the terms. I don't think the Bible poses great contradictions, but again, you have to sometimes take it to just compare it amongst itself and to understand what it says. So let no one say when I'm tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. So he himself doesn't tempt anyone, but Christ was tempted. But remember I read, it said he was tempted by the devil. Now someone said, isn't God the sovereign God? Yes. Isn't God in charge? Yes. So isn't God responsible for Christ being tempted? Yes. But he has a lot of times uses the devil as the tool or uses other factors as the tool. Again, I don't find this any problem, but I like to at least address what some people might find as a problem. And I like to, again, make my case known why I believe these come together in harmony. Verse 14 says, each one is tempted when he's drawn away by his own desires and enticed. But that is not the temptation that Christ had. Christ was not enticed by his own desires. The devil, I believe, was trying to stir up those desires. I think, to me, these work in harmony together, but they have to be understood that God is sovereign. God either does or allows, but sometimes he uses tools. Let's look over in Isaiah chapter 45. Isaiah chapter 45, one of my favorite sermons to give, one of my traveling sermons, is to talk about three ways the sovereign God works. I've given it here a number of times. Those of you listening around the country, I've probably given it to 20 different congregations. It's one of my traveling sermons I've given through the years, to showing the way that I believe God works three different ways. I use the Bible to show that, which again helps people understand why it seemed like he worked with Moses this way, and he seemed like he worked with Job this way, and he seemed like he worked with time and chance this way. And I believe all of them are true. And I believe God works different ways at different times for different purpose. Well, the purpose is always the general purpose is the same. The specific purposes vary. And I usually begin that presentation with Isaiah 45, verse 7. He says, I form the light and I create darkness. I make peace and I create calamity. I, the Lord, do all these things. The King James says, I make peace and I create evil. That's what your King James says. The New King James says calamity. I think the calamity is a better translation, although I think it's interesting. I can make the case, how does God create evil? You have to discuss it to get to how a great loving God can create evil, but he can create evil by pulling back his hedge, giving some certain figures like the devil or others authority to go do something. So he's in charge, he's sovereign. But the point is, the Father does not tempt with evil. So if he's going to tempt with evil, he has to use other factors. I don't have this on the handout. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 22, I believe it is. Let me see. I think this might, to me, I use this in that sermon, 1 Kings 22. Yes, let's see. Yes, 1 Kings 22, verse 19. This will show the way God will deal with and how he'll use even evil spirits. 1 Kings 22, verse 19. Therefore, hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting on his throne, and all the host of heaven standing by on his right hand and his left hand. It's a similar experience as the opening of the book of Job. God is there talking to the heavenly host around, and you're going to see, this makes the point, that God is sovereign and God sets the overall pattern, but sometimes he lets the details being fixed by others. Sometimes he let the devil make the details, like in the book of Job. God started the trial for Job. Satan asked, let's do this. And God said, approved. I approve your plan. Because it couldn't happen if God didn't approve it. And so oftentimes when you see something happen, God will hear a plan from the devil and say, okay, we'll go with that. And then he keeps a barrier up. This case, notice what happens here. In verse 20, and the Lord said, who will persuade Ahab to go up that he may fall at Ramoth Gilead? God is saying, Ahab's going to fall. That's going to happen. But I'm open to the details. And if you have any details, how can we make it happen? He's going to fall. That's my purpose. He's going to fall. But let's analyze, let's consider possibilities how it will work. And so it was like an interactive Bible study. One spoke up and said, let's do it this way. Ooh, let's do it this way. And another said, no, let's do it this way. And he's listening to the input. And finally, verse 21, a spirit came forward and stood up and said, I'll do it. I'll do it. And the Lord said, how? What's your plan? What are your details? What do you have in mind? The Lord said, in what way? And the Spirit said, I will go and be a lying spirit in the mouth of his prophets. That's my plan. I'll do it. And the Lord said, deal approved. You will do it. I will let your plan go forward. I will let you go forward, always within God's parameters. And that's how it happened. I point that out because God does not tempt people with evil, but he does allow Satan or evil spirits to be tools of that to figure out the details that he approves. Okay, now I also want to remind you then that God promises to help us to escape temptation. A couple verses you can check later is 1 Corinthians 10:13. 1 Corinthians 10:13, he provides a way of escape. He provides a way of escape. And so no matter what trial you're in right now, you have health trial going on, you got a financial trial going on right now, God's promised a way of escape. Take him up on that promise. Of course, Revelation 3:10 is another verse. Revelation 3:10, He even said he'll keep you from the hour of temptation. So in other words, sometimes he allows the devil to create challenges, and sometimes he protects us from the challenges. So that just leads us now, we're going to get back here in a minute to the actual trial itself. I was reading about the subject. When I was reading about the subject, I found it real interesting. I like to do that. Even when I have my presentation done, I'll read about the subject just to see what other people say. And unfortunately, I didn't write down the source of this quote. So turn to 1 John 2:16. By the way, when I give presentations, since I don't believe in groupthink, I'd like to make a presentation to help you to think. I know when I was up in Tennessee, one of the fellows said, I love it when you speak. I love it when you teach because you make me think. I said, good, well, that's exactly what I'm trying to do, make you think. There was a time here, as you're turning 1 John 2:16, there was a time here one of our friends who attends one of the local Church of God congregations came to visit. And one thing I like to do in sermons is pose a question. I pose a question, and then I don't answer the question. And the lady came up afterwards. She was like, you posed the question and you didn't even answer it. I said, no, I didn't. And she said, and you're not going to answer it now, are you? I said, no, I'm not. Because you want me to go home and think about it. That's right. You want me to go home and study about it. That's right. That's a lot of my style. Ask questions I don't even answer. And some churches aren't used to that because, unfortunately, they believe that the preacher has to have an opinion about everything. And sometimes I have opinions, and even though I have a good opinion, I don't always share it. Because I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it. So anyway, why that's now is, I want you to think about this. 1 John 2:16 talks about three things. And I want you to analyze, could these possibly apply in any way to the temptation of Christ? So Dave, you're not going to tell us it is. You're going to put this out there and let us think about it. Yep. And you're going to let us think about, do all three apply? Do two of them apply? Do one of them apply or none of them apply? Yep. But I found it interesting. I'm going to present his opinion, and you can analyze it, and you can draw your conclusion. In 1 Kings 2:16, he says, verse 15 says, do not love the world, don't love the things in the world, for if anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Verse 16 says three things here. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not from the Father, it's of the world. So I want you to think about the three temptations, because one of the authors I read online said he felt that these three things were what Jesus had to face. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. I probably shouldn't, but I'll tell you, I think two of them are really pretty solid, and the other one's by how you interpret it. But let's analyze this guy, which I don't know his name, let's analyze the three trials, how many of them could apply, or if any of them apply. Now let's go to Matthew chapter 4. Matthew chapter 4. He was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights afterwards, he was hungry. Now when the tempter came to him, he said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. And he answered him and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. The second trial, by the way, Luke's order is different than this order. We're using the Matthew order. Verse 5, then the devil took him up into a holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's written, he shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus replied, it is written again, that you shall not tempt the Lord your God. Again, the devil took him up an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdom of the world and their glory. And he said to him, all these things I will give you if you'll fall down and worship me. But Jesus said, away with you, Satan, for it's written, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. It's interesting, a person could make the case, as this one did online, that the first trial in Matthew 4:3 is the lust of the flesh. I can make that case. Verse 3 again. When the tempter came to him, he said, if you are the Son of God, command these stones become bread. See, he's appealing to now, you're hungry. You want to eat. Bread smells good. And I've told you before, my father was a meat manager in a grocery store, a grocery chain up in Pennsylvania. and they would put the bread smell into the system, the air conditioning system, so when you walk in the store, you'd be smelling fresh bread, because they knew that if you smell fresh bread, you're more likely to spend money and buy food. Actually, I don't criticize that. I think it's pretty smart. But anyway, so he's hungry, and he wants fresh bread. He wants that fresh bread. And so certainly I could say, I could agree with that man in this regard, that yeah, I can see how this is kind of the lust of the flesh. This is not an exorbitant lust. It's not a flashy lust. It's not an exotic lust. It's merely bread. But it's personal, and could be a little temptation to be a little selfish. I'm not saying he was. I'm saying, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and eat? Just go ahead and eat some. You're hungry. You've been through a lot. I'm sure you pleased the Lord really well, but why don't you just go ahead and eat? So I would say that there's a good value in that, to me personally, that he was appealing to the desire of the flesh, the anticipation of the flesh, because he was fasting for 40 days. That would make sense to me. Chapter 4, verse 6. This one, he said, was the pride of life. The pride of life. If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, and you'll be caught by the angels. I can see that could be appealing to his pride. Yeah, you're special. You're pampered. God won't let anything happen to you. You won't get bruised. It'll be okay. You're more special than the rest of us. Jump down, and the angels will catch you. I can see that. Again, we're talking about the devil trying to trick him. The devil could be trying to attract to the pride of life. Now, I get that. The third one's the one I'm not so sure about. I can see the case he made. I can understand the case he made. The lust of the eyes. The lust of the eyes. In verses 8 and 9. The devil took him up to an exceedingly high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and said, all these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me. Well, yeah, he's playing on his emotion. He's wanting him to feel sorry for the people. Okay, I can see that a little bit, It all would depend how you define the word lust, I guess, because don't think about, again, Christ is not a luster, but again, he's using his eyes, he's using his eyesight, he's trying to help him see. So anyway, you can think about it if you think that man's opinion about those three things mentioned in 1 John 2:16, could they be describing how the Satan worked against the Son of God? Well, I can see his point. And you would either agree with this point heartily or disagree with it or agree with it in part like me. I agree with it in part. But I want you to think about it. I thought that was a real interesting point of view I'd not come to on my own. Thought, okay, the devil certainly has a way of working, and he used a normal way of working with the Son of God. Now I want to spend the remaining time talking about 5 different points about this whole thing. 5 different points that I hope we can learn from. The first point I want you to think about is the devil set a subtle tone to control. The serpent set a subtle tone to control. He set the terms, he set the narrative, he set the ground rules, he set the conditions. How do I mean it? He did it in the first 2. In chapter 4, verse 3 and chapter 4, verse 6, he says, if you are the Son of God. That's tricky. It's pretty sneaky. Pretty sneaky. He sounds like the serpent back in the Old Testament. He didn't say since you are the Son of God. It's if you are the Son of God. If you are the Son of God. He's setting the terms. Now, I like to bring, I've talked about this before, and I'll bring it up again. I'll repeat it again. I think it's that important to repeat. You have to be careful about people trying to control you. I will say back in 95, I got to see how church leaders tried to control people. I should have seen it sooner. I didn't. Maybe I was late to the game, but I saw it back in 95. And I've been noticing more and more how civil leaders try to control us in much nefarious ways and much grander ways of taking away censorship and everything else. People try to control. Yes, we've known that, but maybe we can see it more clearly now how people try to control. And one thing I'd like to mention to you is you know me for 29 years as your pastor. Some of you beat longer than that when we were in another church. But you know that I'm trying to help you understand what control is and not to be controlled by anyone. Not to be controlled by a clergy, and certainly not to be controlled by government. The thing is, I've told this story before. The fact that I tell this story shows me how disappointed I am in myself. But I was 22 years old. I appreciated growing up in Pennsylvania. I wouldn't want to live there now. I don't like the way they turn things, but I like my education. I like my school background. I like the things. I like the history I was taught. I like the debate I was taught. I liked in gym. This is where old people. In gym, they would have in the gymnasium, in PE, they'd have a rope, and then you would climb the rope to the top of the rope. I don't see that happen. They may do that in schools. I don't see that because of insurance and people getting hurt, etc. But we'd climb the rope. And so now you could use your hands if you could, but you'd use your feet if you had to. I had to use my feet. I wasn't strong enough just to go up just using my arms. But I used my feet and I could climb the top of the rope. You hit the top of the gymnasium. I loved doing that as a teenager. Well, we were at a basketball. I was up in Wisconsin pastoring. I was assistant pastoring a church. I was not pastoring yet. And we were with our buddies. Our wives were there. And I'm so disgusted with myself because I let them goad me into climbing the rope. Because we were in a gym there, and the rope was there. And I just happened to say, yeah, I used to do that in school. I used to do that in school. Well, I was 22, and some of them said, you'd never have done that before. And I let them appeal to my vanity and pride, and I'll show you. You say, well, man, that's a long time ago, Dave. You're an old man. Yeah, but I'm so disappointed in myself that they goaded me into climb that rope, hit it, and I came back down, and I thought, what did I prove? I just proved that I was listening to them. I just proved that they could manipulate me. That's all it proved. It proved that they could manipulate me. And so you can see for a long time, I don't like being manipulated. I really don't like being manipulated. I'm like many of you. I don't like being manipulated. You don't like being manipulated. So you see it, that's what Satan was doing here. If you be the Son of God. If you be the Son of God. I'm going to try to steer you in doing what I want you to do. Personally, I don't like being manipulated. When I go buy a car, I don't like being manipulated. I want to be the buyer. I don't want people to sell to me. I want to be the buyer. So I watch when people try to sell to me. And that's what they do. I can't believe when people call you up and they say this. Your car warranty is about to expire. It must work. It must work because they do it all the time. I've never had a car warranty. So not only do I not have a car warranty with you calling me, I've never had one. So it's not about to expire. But it must work because they do it regularly. I don't like that kind of thing. I don't like to be manipulated. I don't like to be tricked. You don't either, do you? Probably not. I don't assume you would. I don't like when say, you have to be in my church if you want to be in a place of safety. I don't like that. You say, were you ever in a church like that? A long time ago I was. Yeah, a long time ago I was in the church like that. So you say, okay, so now this helps us understand why you give us a lot of freedom and you pastor us. Yeah, because I was at a situation, this is one of my friends, so I won't say his name. I was at a meeting up in Wisconsin, and we were having, he spoke first and I spoke second. They had interactive, it was interactive. And he got up and said, if you don't dance in church, you're not worshiping God. And I'm thinking, oh man, I can't let that go. I can't let that go. So, but as it turned out, he was the only one who believed it, because when we did interactive. See, here's my point. This will not surprise you. I don't care if you dance in church. I don't care if you dance in church for 5 hours. I don't care. I do care when someone says, you're not of God, or you're not pleasing God if you don't dance in church. So again, when people say, you have to do this, they determine the terms. You have to do this to be a Christian. You have to do that to be a Christian. I believe God has standards. I believe God has laws. But I watch a lot of people put their own twist on it, their own interpretation on it. And that's why we try to be really careful not to do that. We try to present information to you. We give you from our heart what we think's right. But you have to watch. I love that because we talked about, again, how false prophets come in or how people get away from the true doctrines and things. I found it real interesting. Oh, by the way, I mentioned in the interactive Bible study, I was listening to Bot Radio. That's 90.7. It's a station that's in Big Sandy, Longview, and Tyler. They're preaching all day long. I was listening to it on the way up, and they were saying that there's a great problem in the church, that false people are coming into the church. You hear that a lot. And what they said was the false preachers are those who like to claim there's new apostles and new prophets today. And they were warning, saying, if someone claims to be an apostle or prophet, beware, they're probably bringing in false doctrines into the church. They were acknowledging that there were apostles and prophets in the past. They even quoted Ephesians 4. But they said, be careful those who claim to be the one true guy or the one true church. And I'm thinking, wow, I was agreeing with what the guy was saying. And in fact, I even said, I got to be careful. I don't want to launch into that in my sermon, which I'm doing right now. Because it really got my attention. It really got my attention. But the thing is, they said they're introducing things through music. They're introducing through Bible classes, kids classes, and it was really interesting. It tied in with what John was saying in the interactive study. It was really interesting. I don't like when people set the tone. You have to do this, or you're not of God. And again, God sets my Heavenly Father sets expectations for me. I believe that. But I don't believe just because everyone claims that they're speaking for God or they're accurate about what they do. And that should make sense to you. You say, yeah, that's the way you deal with us. You deal with us conviction and compassion. You deal with, for us to believe, to our very being what we believe, but be kind to other people. If you are the Son of God, go ahead and make some bread. You're hungry. Poor guy, you're hungry. Just go ahead and make some bread. God would want you to eat. Well, then again, he said, the second thing he said, if you be the Son of God, jump, and God will catch you. Because you're special, God will catch you. Just be careful about people setting the terms for you. Be careful about that. So that's the first thing, the devil set a subtle tone to control. The second point I wanted to say to you, the devil had an end game to close the deal. He had an end game. And when we look at the third part, when again he took him to the high mountains and said, all these things can be yours, I believe his end game was to play upon Christ's good nature, Christ's kindness, Christ's love. His end game was, you can end this suffering now. I believe the first two were just a setup. I believe it was a setup to weaken him, to try to weaken his mind, to try to weaken his resolve. He had an end game. Because the third point I want to mention is the devil finished with his true motive. This is what it was all about. The last phrase in verse 9, fall down and worship me. See, that turning stones into bread, that's setting you up. Jumping and let angels catch you, that's setting you up. The end game was fall down and worship me. Number 4, the devil can only offer a deliverance. He could not deliver on the promise. He did say, all these I can give you. He couldn't. He could not give it. Now, someone can say, well, he was the God of this world. Yes, I say he was the God of this world. But he was making promises I don't think he can completely deliver. But again, he was like, you can have all this, and you don't have to suffer. You don't have to die. But the Son of God knew he had to die on the cross. He said, no, the deal is I'm going to be beaten up first. And I'm going to die on the cross, and I'm going to be resurrected. That's the plan. But that's what I'm telling you, Son of God. That's what I'm telling you. You don't have to do that. You can bypass that ugly part And you can reach them all right now. He couldn't deliver that promise. He could not deliver that promise. But he made it anyway. I mean, the devil makes a lot of promises he can't deliver on. The salesmen do that. They'll make promises they can't deliver on. I can save you money. Oh, no, you can't. No, you can't. I can make everything smooth for you. No, you can't. And the last, number 5, the Son of God did not take the easy way out. He did not take the easy way out. He said, it sounds nice that you want me not to suffer, but I think in your heart you don't mind me suffering. You don't have the power to make this all happen. You don't have the power to deliver. You don't have the power to make the kingdom of God come here. Nice try. Nice try. So let me repeat those 5 points again. The devil set a subtle tone to control. They'll try to control you if you are the Son of God, and try to control you. Number 2, the devil had an end game in an attempt to close the deal. Number 3, the devil finished with his true motive, what he really wanted. Number 4, the devil could only offer deliverance. He cannot deliver on the promise. He had empty words. He cannot make it happen. And number 5, the Son of God did not take the easy way out. The Son of God fulfilled his purpose. The Son of God listened to the Father. And I hope you'll find the example of Matthew 4 and Luke 4. I hope you will find this message and the information from the Scripture to be very encouraging. Allow the temptation of Christ to bless you to have a great week.